What's up, everybody? This is the Rabid Hedgehog, and we are talking about Batwing versus the Shark Nose. This is going to be an ultra limited motorcycle from Harley-Davidson, which features the Batwing fairing. Now, luckily for us, we both have taller windscreens on both bikes we're riding. We both have the wind diffusers. We got everything on these particular motorcycles, both stage 1, both twin cams. So that's the good news. Of course, this one's got the relocation kit. Both of them have the same twin-cooled twin cam engine, which is good. So everything's going to be comparable. Rushmore bikes, starting for this particular one, starts in 2014. What they did was they added in the infotainment system, the more modern gauge look. It took away the old school CD player and all that fun stuff. It added connectivity to your phone by putting it in there. You get a little bit more features inside the Rushmore project when it comes to Harley-Davidson and the fairings and stuff. Both these bikes are going to be stock. Both of them are going to have the stock handlebars and everything that we'll be discussing. So that's the good news there. Like I said, both of them do have the taller windscreens, which is good. And then, of course, you got your standard controls on your Harley-Davidsons. You got your kills and starts and stops. Everything is the same. Information button that you can go through, and it tells you what your temperature is, oil pressure, all that good stuff. Right turn signal cancels self whenever you turn. Navigating all the information on the screen, navigation for home or to home, and then also your up and down on your power, and also your seek scan and all that fun stuff. Cruise control is here, and of course you have your system there. So everything is here on both bikes are the same, except this one does have the CB radio. That's why it's got the joystick on the right side. So both of them have pretty much everything else that we're going to be riding today. So let's go ahead and got to mount this thing up a little bit weird because of the whole, I'm going to be carrying a passenger today too. Alrighty. Okay, so everything's the same like I said, except up here is where all your gauge cluster is, and we'll show you what it's like on the Shark Nose. So everything's here, trip A, B, remaining fuel, your odometer, all that's there, tachometer here, of course. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll get this thing out on the road. Okay, ready? People, off your phone so we can go instead of being looking at it and getting us freaking ran over. Come on. Now this one has something that your typical Ultra Classics, Ultra Limiteds don't actually come with, and that's going to actually be the backrest. They have all the docking ports and stuff like that, so you do get a little bit different seating position when you have the big backrest on the back of it. I'm not a particular fan of those at this time, maybe later in life, but not now. Now the difference between the Ultra Limiteds and the Road Glides, and that includes the Road Glide Ultra, is Ultra Limiteds actually come with heated grips straight out of the box, which that is kind of a nice convenience feature. And of course CVOs have heated seats and stuff as well, so you can get these in all sorts of configurations. Now, as stated, this particular motorcycle is a Harley-Davidson 103 twin cam that is basically rocking the Stage 1 kit. Stage 1 kit is cleaning up the air breather, making it breathe a little bit better, and also pipes. That's basically all they're doing, and a tune, a slight tune. So both of these motorcycles luckily have that same setup, which we can sit there and talk about the big differences. But the biggest difference, of course, is going to be the fairing in front. Now, the fairing on a Batwing is right here. Everything is very easily reached. You have your auxiliary buttons here where you can sit there and turn your fog lamps on if you need them. You can come through and you can touch the screen. The screen is a touch screen even with gloves on. It's kind of nice. Everything is very right there in front of you. Very simple to read. Everything is just, you know, just there. Very well laid out. Now here's the thing though, and I'm going to go ahead and get some diffusing going because it is a little warm today. Let's see here. It is a whopping 95 degrees, a little bit more even possible. So I'm going to go ahead and set that. That way I can point that diffuser toward me here. I've already got the bottom vents on the lowers open. So, with that being said, we got everything opened up here. And the nice thing is because this one does have these diffusers, you can sit there and kind of aim and point the wind at you, and you can sit there and you got a lot of wind flow right through here, which helps cut the engine heat off of your leg. It's a nice thing to have, especially in temperatures like this. Now it's climbed to 97. Like I said, pretty sure it's a little hotter than 95. I think that was a lie. Now these motorcycles do sit a little bit differently from each other too, the way they bring their handlebars back. So the way that this one works is it sits you a little bit more straight up on the motorcycle, and then because the handlebars are a little bit lower and they kind of a little bit more forward. So you sit down, your arms are straight down, and they're out to the bar itself very low, and they do kind of curve a little bit, almost back a little bit, so you have a little bit of bend to your wrist. It's a little bit different on that shark nose as well. We'll go through that as well. But when it comes to it, Harley-Davidson sells way more of these particular motorcycles with this configuration, the Batwing fairing. Now, I will say that it gives off one of the problems that you can get with a Batwing. So as stated, the Batwing fairing is all through here. It is a fork-mounted fairing. It is putting weight on the suspension, on the handlebars and everything. So when we're riding like this and we're catching some wind between these barricades and stuff, we start feeling actually a little bit of buffeting in the handlebars, because you can actually feel the wind pushing on the motorcycle. So it does actually bring out some road vibrations, some road feels, some things that may fatigue you a little bit quicker. I mean, it's an extremely common fairing, but it's not without fault. So as we go through here, I can feel the cross breeze and stuff. I can feel the handlebars are moving a little bit here and there. Definitely know that there's some wind today. And a funny thing is like when it comes to like your body too, the Batwing is great at deflecting weather and cold air and stuff like that, but when it's miserably hot like this today, it would be nice to have some air. And you can actually feel a little bit of, it's kind of funny because my jacket's puffing out toward me because it's getting a little bit of odd, weird wind deflection coming through and everything like that, because it's got some dead air zone right here because the slipstream vent is covered by this auxiliary baggage, and that's kind of a disadvantage in itself. There's only one vent on the Batwing fairing. I mean, you got these diffusers that you can play around with, twist, turn, and kind of make it where it works, but you don't have airflow straight on you. You kind of have to aim it. But I mean, there is some advantages. Like I said, you can get that turn to where you actually are able to feel the wind blowing off the heat from the lower part of the motorcycle away from your body, which is a very helpful thing. Now, the twin cam during this time period became the twin cam. That means that those lowers right there are housing tiny radiators with fans that are allowing this to actually have liquid going through the heads that's cooled, and the heat is being discharged off the sides. That is helping the rider. But unlike the Milwaukee 8, your catalytic converters and stuff are a little bit closer, so you get a little bit of heat building in the back end on your thighs and on your seat. So you actually feel it in your bum that you're starting to kind of get cooked a little bit. And that could be annoying. Now the twin cam, right now I am in 6th gear. We're doing highway speeds, and we're doing about 2,500 RPMs or so. Like I said, stage 1 kid on board. So it cruises quite along nicely. Now this motorcycle does have more vibrations than a Milwaukee 8, that's for sure. Milwaukee 8s are counterbalance motors. This one is not. That is not exactly a fair comparison when you're sitting there going, well, the Milwaukee 8 is a better engine because it's smoother. Not necessarily, it just means it's counterbalanced. Now, one thing's for sure is the twin cam is not a bad engine. It actually powers this motorcycle very adequately. I had a member or subscriber actually asked me if I could ride an Ultra Classic with the twin cam, and I gladly will. And I'm doing it right now. It's kind of weird that I never did. During the whole time I worked at Harley, you'd think I would have picked up a camera and actually taken off on a twin cam Ultra Classic, but most everything at the time was Milwaukee 8, Milwaukee 8. Let's get these things out there. But this one is not a bad motorcycle. The 103 is not the most potent engine in the world. I mean, the thing is, you got to keep it in a power band around 2,500 RPM. If you do, you could pull it and you can see it actually starts to get some decent power coming out of it. So the twin cam engine is not bad. It doesn't hurt this thing, and it's on both of the motorcycles, and they're both heavy. They're both 900 pounds plus. Now, both of these motorcycles are going to be equipped with the ITMS as well, which is basically parade mode. It shuts off the back cylinder. If you're sitting at a stoplight long enough, it's going to kick in, and it will allow that to be cooler on that as well. So what does that do? Well, like I said, these bikes are pretty much the same. Everything's the same starting at the headstock back. Of course, both of them have lowers, because the one I'm going to be riding with the Shark Nose is an Ultra, Road Glide Ultra. So that means that both of them feature the lowers and everything. Now, here's one thing about it. Road Glides have different windshield configuration. Generally, they're a lower windscreen. This Ultra has this super tall windscreen on it. I'm actually looking through it. The thing is, I don't like that because it's too warm. The one thing that I wish that Harley could do, because on the Indian Batwings, the windscreens are movable. They are electronic. The Goldwing, you could technically say, has a Batwing as well. It also has a power windscreen. That would be so helpful right now in this temperature, to be able to get a little bit more wind coming out of it. Now, the funny thing is, because that slipstream vent is closed off, like I said, disadvantage, because this one only has the one. There's buffeting on at the top of the helmet because there's nothing to shove the air away and keep the dead air out. It's just in the way. So that's kind of a fun thing about these Batwing fairings, is that they have only that one vent. They have diffusers that you could try to point and get it to where it works, but they just block so much air coming in that it's getting so hot. Like I said, my jacket's not even behaving as normal when I catch side winds and stuff. And as I go into the wind, you know, I got these pointed where it's keeping that heat coming from up the engine, which is not a bad thing, but it's not helping my body out, and I can't get them to turn toward the body that well at all because they just don't turn that direction. Now, one thing I've always liked about the Harley touring bikes is, of course, having heel toe shifter. Much, much better to shift with. I don't know why. You got floorboards, you need heel toes. But like I said, when it comes to the Batwing fairing versus the Shark Nose, the biggest thing that you're going to have is you're going to feel the weight of that. The bike doesn't seem to be as quick on its feet. When you go to turn, it feels lazy. It definitely has weight on the fork. It definitely changes the weight distribution. Shark Nose fairings are frame mount, which means that they're not on this fork. This fork is holding all the way to this infotainment center, everything in it, and you feel it. And like I said, you catch enough wind, you start feeling movement like this. You feel a wobble, and that is disconcerting to some people. For me, I'm used to these wobbles. Now, with the redesigns of the 14 pluses, it's not as pronounced. You still feel wind blast. You still feel that coming through the bars. Because like I said, if you're gonna have something forcing against you, you're gonna feel it somewhere. So you definitely know it's there. Now, braking on these motorcycles, these are both very big girls. The braking is adequate. Some of these have link braking. Link braking means that if you slam on one pedal or pull the handlebar in, both of them go. And engine braking on twin cams, as always, engine braking. Very good. Now, a lot of people call this kind of motorcycle the geezer glide, but there's nothing wrong with riding a big, comfy touring bike, Batwing or Shark Nose at all. You get to carry a lot of stuff with you. You get to carry a passenger in extreme comfort. You usually got better suspension that's more plush. It's not a sporting bike. It's just designed to cruise and eat up miles. Man, this side wind, I can feel a lot of that wind right now cutting in. And you can definitely know. And of course, you can feel the road too, but it's weird. When you have the weight on there, of course, it's pressing it down more into the road, which allows it to be able to trace the road a little bit differently. You don't put all that weight back on it. It actually does help glide a little bit better too. So right now, yeah, we're bouncy. Yeah, it's air suspension. You know, this is before the emulsion shocks. So I'm doing my best I can here. Now, an advantage to the Batwing fairing is during turns like this, fairing goes with you. For me, I don't really look at the fairing. I don't really target with the fairing. I don't try to do anything that may cause me to ride incorrectly. I try to look beyond what's in front of me and beyond the fairing, because if you keep looking at a target, of course you're going to fixate and you're going to crash. So when it comes to this, it helps a lot of people because that does help them not target. Having the fairing move in the direction that you're going is a help. It's not a hindrance. It definitely does help people when they ride. But to me, it don't matter. I prefer not having the additional weight to deal with when you're turning and gliding more down the road in more comfort. I mean, that is why most of your motorcycles that are out there will actually have a fixed fairing. Most of your touring bikes from like BMW are fixed fairing. Most of your touring bikes from Yamaha, from Honda are all fixed fairing. Fixed fairings are the way to go for going down the road with really, really awesome comfort. Because like this bike, like my Guzzi, they both have Batwings. You can feel the wind, you can feel movement, you know that's there. So you have that additional weight, you have that additional force that's coming against you. And as a rider, you feel it. I mean, you can probably look a little bit and you can probably see a little bit of movement here and there. Not as going to be as pronounced on camera, but in my arms, I know it's there. So, how does the Shark Nose compare when going through wind, when going through on roads like this? Does it glide over better, like I've been saying, or not? Well, let's go take a look at one. We'll pull one out, and we'll take a good ride on it as well. Alright, second video is going to be the Road Glide, which is the Shark Nose fairing. So we started with the Batwing on the Ultra Classic, and now we're going to go for the Shark Nose, which on this is going to be a fixed fairing on the frame. So it takes the weight off of the front forks. As you can see, they move independently of the fairing. Now this is a Road Glide Ultra. Road Glide Ultras do add the Twin Cool 103, just like the Limited as well. And it does have, of course, the tour pack and everything. So it does have something though that the Batwing does not have. You have the slipstream vent on top, just like the Batwing. But you also have those two down here, controllable by these little buttons right there. They pop in and pop out by a spring right down there. So you get a little bit different airflow with this fixed fairing. You actually get a little bit more. Now down here you get the same slides right there to open those vents as well. Same saddlebag on the Rushmore. So these are both Rushmore bikes. Anything 15 and after for Road Glides, 14 and after for the Ultras. So you get those one-touch saddlebags, and of course you get the tour pack as well. It is also one-touch. And the floorboards and everything. Like I said, this is the 103. We're going to have everything open because it's 95 degrees, it's hot. And we're going to carry a passenger on this one as well. Now, just like the Ultra, you're going to have the same controls on the Road Glide, but you're going to have a slightly different configuration with the speedometer and the tachometer being down on the bottom, along with the rest of your information like your odometer, your trips, your remaining fuel, and everything. It's down here instead. You get your fuel up here and your voltage up here, kind of like you do. Now, if you notice, this is a little further out. You can see that if I'm sitting back, I can't actually reach this one. So this one's not as easily manipulated as the other one, because the other one's right there with you. This one puts it further out away. Of course, with you got these controls, I mean, you can sit there and use everything here to activate everything there. So you don't have to worry about it too much. So you go in here, you can turn it on. I'm not going to try to have sound because we know how that works with you know, copyright information and stuff. But if you hit the home button, you can go through and change out your weather band, your AM, your FM, and everything. You can go through and change that on there. Of course, you can come up here, you can go back, and you can, of course, manipulate everything from the right control stick and hit enter. Now, this bike is equipped, as well as the Ultra, with that rear cylinder deactivation. They started that with the Rushmore. You can either rock it and turn it on that way, or you can go through and actually do everything else through the monitor here, basically. So that is there. Now, these older ones did come, you know, with cruise control and everything on the left side. Over here on this right side, you see this deleted. Some bikes may have a CB radio there. And of course, with this new fairing on the Road Glides Rushmore, you have this storage in there as well, whereas the Batwing only has the single door that comes open. Now, a lot of people do get a little bit thrown off by the shark nose. Does not move. Like I said, it is independent. It is a fork mount. But that is the thing about it, that yes, Harley-Davidson does sell more Batwing fairings than they do the shark nose, but when people buy the shark nose, more people ride more miles on them. So let's hop up here and get on a ride, and we'll discuss that as well. All right, so hopping up on this, of course, this one does have a different windshield than what comes stock. On your Road Glides, it normally has a very short windscreen. So this one comes up a lot taller. Most of them come down to about there. But it does still give you a good comparison when you're walking or when you're riding through and looking at this. Of course, down here you can see the gear indication. Very similar setup on both touring models as stated before. Now, both of these bikes, like I said, they are Rushmore bikes, but both of these bikes are they're pre-Milwaukee 8 motorcycles. So with them being the pre-Milwaukee 8 motorcycles, this is the Twin Cam 103. And of course, I was asked, you know, if I could do these bikes, because it's kind of weird. I kind of realized I've never actually done Road Glides or Ultras or anything like that with the Twin Cam, except for the 110 variants, which are the CVOs. So that's kind of an unfair test when you're not using the base engine. You're using the top of the line motorcycle, so it kind of puts everything at a disadvantage because you automatically get the best power and everything. Now, this one does have the stage 1 kit, so that means it has the exhaust and the breather on it, so it's not fully stock, but it's not been overly done either. Now, one thing I will point out when it comes to riding these big touring bikes, when it comes to Indian and some of the others that are out there, the Gold Wings and some of those, the windscreen up here is fixed while those move. So like BMW makes moving windscreens, as does Indian, as does Honda, as does several others. They make these things where you don't have to have a fixed windscreen, and that to me is more preferable. It's something that I wish Harley-Davidson would do, is to update to have such a setup And that would help them get a little bit more modern, in my opinion, because right now they kind of fall behind in that. If they're going to claim premium motorcycle, they definitely need to do something about the windscreen. And I get that there's a lot of people that are like, well, it's about customizability, it's about making the bike your own. Well, you can still buy the bigger windscreens. You can still do that with Indian. You can still do that with some of the others that offer the movable windscreens. It's just that it'd be nice that you have the option to see if you don't have to. You can buy the bike and it's already pretty much all ready to go. So that's also kind of a thing to look at. Now, also on these shark noses, your auxiliary buttons, if you have anything, are down there as well. All right, so this is where this bike will definitely shine. As stated with a batwing fairing, there's nothing wrong with a batwing fairing. But there is just that little bit of difference that makes this one a little bit better. First off, the way the handlebars come back with the shark nose. This is a stock setup. They come up and they come right back to you. Your hands fall naturally into place. You're sitting in a lounge chair on this motorcycle. My arms go straight down, in fact somewhat lower than the handlebars on this bike, and then come back up slightly and then rest comfortably on these grips. You don't feel the road vibration coming through as much because you don't have the wind buffeting against the fairing that buffets against the bars. This nose completely just cuts through the wind. And that's where the advantage comes from. I mean, you look at Honda, you look at Yamaha, you look at a lot of different touring bike manufacturers, and almost every single one of them use a fixed fairing on their motorcycles. And this is why, because these noses just cut wind and they don't transmit any wind buffeting, any feeling, or any extra weight to the handlebars. This motorcycle feels much more in tune with the road. You can see just barely any input and the motorcycle is already changing directions. This is a heavy beast. This is an over 900-pound motorcycle. And it doesn't necessarily feel like it at all. It does have some top heaviness to it versus some other contemporaries, but it doesn't translate because you got a very good suspension set up on the front. You have a big inverted fork on this thing. And of course you can see that that nose does not point in the direction you're going to go. And that, like I said, that's the big point that most people have problems with when it comes to having a big immovable fairing, is the fact that it doesn't follow the direction of travel. It throws them off. Well, the thing is, whenever you're on a motorcycle, you lean, you duck, you move, you jive, you look around, and when you got a fixed fairing like this, it's okay to look beyond it. It's okay to look around. It's okay to be able to see past this big fairing. And even with a passenger back there, the bike is handling everything just fine. It's always good to take a motorcycle out that's got a passenger mobility so that way you can feel everything. Now this motorcycle, very much similar to the Ultra, when you're going 60 miles an hour to 65 miles an hour, you're pulling about 2,500 RPM with the twin cam 103. Like I said, this one is a stage 1, as well as that Ultra. It was also stage 1 as well. So luckily, they at least match. Now, mentioning the big gorilla in the room, and that is the airflow. So discussed this before we took off. All these vents are open. This one feels so much better. There's no buffeting whatsoever on the helmet. There's no buffeting on me whatsoever, but it is streamlining because you have some airflow here, airflow here, coming at you. Something that gets blocked by a Batwing because they don't have that. Now, there are additional accessories you can add to Batwing fairings. You can add essentially some air deflectors and stuff like that that can open and close, and air louvers and stuff like that that allow you to be able to direct air back at you. But this one, the air just comes right through and it feels so much better. It does have some deflection down here, which is kind of regrettable right now because it's a little bit warm. And one thing about these Twinkies, they get hot. And this is the twin cooled variant. So up here, there's no storage or anything. Just like the Ultra Limiteds of this time period too, there is radiators and fans behind each of those lowers. So under the lower, you have a vent that you can slide open. You can use that with your foot. You can use it with your hand when you're standing still. But it still has these vents right here and on the other one that spits the air out that direction. Thing is though, get a lot of heat back in here. You definitely feel heat coming through. Where the Batwing has a little bit different setup where the air comes down a little bit better through here versus this one. So you get a little bit more caught up heat in that middle portion. Now, when it comes to the suspension on this bike, the suspension on this is the exact same as the Ultra Classic Ultra Limiteds. This particular model here is not the Showa Emulsion Shocks. Showa Emulsion Shocks came out in 2017 for the touring models, and that's when they switched over as well to Milwaukee 8 Power. These shocks are air shocks. They are adjusted by putting a little air pump onto a valve and pumping them up. So the exact same suspension. Pretty much when it comes to these bikes, there's very limited differences except for the big fairing, as stated before. Now right now I'm doing the same thing. I like being in power bands, we all know that. So I'm in 4th gear, 45 miles an hour. We are pushing 2,500 RPM just as much as we're doing 60 at 6th gear at 2,500 RPM. I can go ahead and bump her up, but she's below 2 grand. Look at all of that. The character of the 103. That low-end character. These were pre-counterbalanced engines, just strictly rubber mounted. And braking is very much similar between the two bikes as well. Now, it is true that it does feel like there's a lot more motorcycle in front of you as well. But in honesty, it's not that much further, because if you look, pretty much you can see the wheel down there between the fairing and the frame and the back there, and you only got a couple inches, so pretty much it's just barely longer than the front nose of this thing, so it's not that much different at all. But the way the shark nose cuts this air, going straight south, we have a pretty decent wind today once again. Oklahoma's notorious for decent winds at all times. And this thing is just plowing right through it. There's no buffeting. Like I said, bigger windscreen. Of course, it is aftermarket. It is a smoked screen too. You have all sorts of options out there in the world. but I don't feel any buffeting. I just feel a good streamline of wind. Of course, you can shut that down as well in the winter. And I just love the way these bikes are able to cut through the wind. And you can see as I go around that corner there, I know that wasn't a very big one. I'll have a bigger one coming up. I just look right through still, just like I normally would on any other motorcycle. Just look right through your turn, look where you want to go. And it doesn't matter if the thing in front of you doesn't move or not. Now I got this side wind coming in, and to be honest, I'm not being pushed around again. Like I said, no buffeting on these handlebars, so stable. Just look down and see there's engine vibrations, and that's it. There's no road vibration, there's no wind vibration from weight on the fork or anything like that. It's just a nice, stable platform. But man, I forgot how hot these Twinkies got. I'm starting to remember now. See, once again, we go through this bigger turn here, and you can see that I'm watching through it, and I'm not looking over the fairing or anything. I'm looking by it, basically. I don't even care that it's there. And trust me, you can tell you're catching the car in front of you. You can tell that you don't have that much room, but you can tell that this guy is an absolute moron and does not know how to drive. Seriously, dude, if you're not up to speed, you can't do anything. You can't unyield, dude. Just go, man. Anyway, as you can see, the 103 does have enough power to get back on the interstate when somebody does not know how to get on the interstate. So if you're wondering if the big Road Glide Ultra, which is the heaviest Harley besides CVO models, with a 103 could get going, it does it just fine. It's fine. Not as fast as some bikes of the era, but definitely adequate. But yeah, it is definitely warm out here. Look at that, 96 degrees. Right now, the EITMS is that engine cylinder cutoff in the back is disabled. Now, the thing is, it may actually be working, it's just disabled by the software at this time because we are in motion. EITMS comes on when the bike comes to a stop and sits at a stoplight or something long enough that it starts to heat up to a point that it goes, I need to shut down to keep you guys cool. So that's where that comes into play, and that's on both of these bikes. So, in conclusion, when it comes to the Batwing versus the Shark Nose, to me, the Shark Nose, although it is definitely the look only a mother can love, is the better of the two fairings when it comes to Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Because this one just simply slices right through the air. It has very good wind deflection, it has very good wind protection, but it also has very good wind flow because you can open it up a little bit more. You got the vents beside the headlights, you got the vent up top, you got a little bit of ventilation coming through from diffusing and stuff like that as well. So you get better airflow on the body as a rider, but you also do have the little bit of disadvantage as it doesn't blow enough heat out here, because you do deflect down here, so it doesn't have enough airflow passing this area to catch that heat off of you. It's just kind of licking at me right now, and it's all over the place down there. It's not like, oh, my ankle's warm, or oh, my leg is warm. It's pretty much my entire seat is warm, my entire leg is warm, my entire ankle is warm, everything's warm. That was just being a twin cam motor. Because this one is not oil cooled as much as the other ones. Now this one does have that liquid cooled head, so it does keep it a little bit cooler than the ones that don't. And of course, Ultra Classics do not have the radiators. They have just the storage there, so those get hotter. this one gets hot enough even with that. So that's where you kind of catch a little bit of advantage and disadvantage. You got a little bit more heat because you don't have as much air bypassing the lower end of the fairing, but you get a lot better airflow on you as the rider, so you feel a little bit better, and it doesn't fatigue you as much because you don't get as rocked, because you're not dealing with as much movement in the handlebars or anything. You're dealing with a much more stable platform when it comes down to having the shark nose fairing on board. So if you're looking at these two massive machines, you're looking at the Batwing, you're looking at the Shark Nose or the Ultra Classic Street Glide, Road Glide Ultras. If you're looking through all those, then definitely take them both out and see what you prefer. I get that it might throw you off at first, you know, if you've got a fairing that's not moving, because that's different for a lot of people because they're used to the moving fairing. But give it a chance, because you're going to love the way they ride. You're going to love the way it slices through the air so much more. So once again, thank you, Indian of Oklahoma City, for allowing me to take out a couple of your used bikes so that way we could do a comparison on these two machines. At any rate, this is the Rabid Hedgehog. If you have any more questions about Ultra Classics, Ultra Limiteds, Road Glides, Road Glide Ultras, Road Kings, Road anything, Street anything, Glide anything, let me know in the comments below. At any rate, keep that shiny side up, folks, and we'll catch you on the next review.